Hello and welcome back to the Middling Along podcast. My guest today is Gemma Westall. She began her menopause journey aged just 27 years old, but didn't actually realise for another 12 long years. Despite repeated doctor's appointments and expensive specialists trying to figure out what was wrong, Gemma finally understood that she was perimenopausal thanks to an Instagram post. Starting HRT at 39 changed her life, but also made her question the lack of education for women and doctors. Any information she could find was aimed directly at menopausal midlifers, which led to her creating Ageless Menopause Information, or AMI, on Instagram in the hope that she could pass on the information she wishes she'd had in her 20s. Gemma is a yoga teacher and now also teaches menopause yoga workshops. A self-professed geek, you'll often find her with her nose in a book or chatting to just about anyone who'll listen about menopause. Welcome to the podcast, Gemma.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I must say I'm a self-professed geek as well, and
Yeah.
my book pile is getting dangerously high. I seem to have developed a bad habit in midlife of starting books but not finishing them. So
Oh yes, especially informational books that, surrounding menopause. I'll sort of dip in and out and find the bits I want and then toss them aside until next time. So yeah, I've got books with all sorts of post-its hanging out and
yeah,
everything.
there you go, lady after
Well,
my own heart.
yeah.
So tell us how. We'll talk a little bit about the kind of the Instagram account in a bit, and sort of how and why you decided to set that up. But 12 years is a very long time to be kind of going through that process of trying to figure out what was happening for you. How did that all kind of kick off? At what point did you sort of start searching for answers?
Well, I was around 27. I remember it well. Usually it's difficult to trace it back, but I remember it well because it was after I'd had my second child. So the return to your cycle after you've had a baby, it can be unpredictable, it can be difficult, or and I kept on finding that every time I was having a period, or just after, usually I would have a week, maybe just over a week, of this incredible itching around the vulva area. And sometimes it felt like it was going a little bit more internally. It was so uncomfortable. And I can remember getting to a point where I would dread it and I would just think, oh God, now am I going to am I going to have my period and finish it and go back to normal? Or am I still going to have this? But of course I was in the mindset of maybe this is just my cycle trying to settle down, having had the baby. And I just kept pushing through, as we hear so many people say. So then, that started to develop into what I thought at the time was recurrent thrush. I kept on, having the discharge and the more discomfort and the burning and all that kind of stuff that would happen all the time, not just when I'd finished a period. So I started seeing doctors then about this and thinking, well, come on, this can't be right. Like, we need to get this settled. I'd have fluconazole, like the thrush tablet capsule things. I had them at one point. I had them continuously for 3 months. To try and sort of reset what was going on. But of course now, jumping the gun a little bit, I can understand that was vaginal dryness. That was what we now recognise as a perimenopausal symptom of dryness occurring, my body trying very desperately to readdress the balance of hydration in the area and creating all sorts of discharge and sensations and things. So even though I was treating for thrush, it wasn't actually that most of the time. Sometimes it was, because that's just how it had developed with the pH balance being all different. But that was a nightmare. And then that continued and continued, and eventually it turned into recurrent UTIs. So I would have cystitis or UTI every 3 months maybe. And not just a little bit where, you could have a sachet and, you'd be all right after a little while. I would be rolling around on the bathroom floor in the middle of the night trying to get hold of emergency doctors. And
with young children as well, presumably, and dealing with all of that on the side.
Awful. Yeah, horrendous. And, I'm sure lots and lots of women can sympathise with how awful cystitis can be. But I sort of then lived with the fear of it, so I knew I couldn't go for too long without another one coming, and that really impacts your mental health, and every time I got another one, I think, goodness, what is this? And what's wrong with me? Was that just reoccurring question?
Don't trust your body. It's like,
No.
what is going on?
Exactly. And so all of that time, that was going on for years, literally for years. And alongside that, it's only sort of fairly recently in the past few years that I've realised that my fatigue levels were crazy. At the time I had 2 young children, so this all started after my second child. So I had a 2-year-old and a baby. So I thought, of course I'm going to be tired, I'm just a tired young mum, and I just put up with that, that's just what I thought was right. Never really realised that my level of fatigue was probably a little bit more intense than it should have been. So that was, I started to recognise as I tracked back, potentially another symptom. I went to all sorts of different people. I went to all sorts of different doctors. I went to specialists for gynecology, obviously. Had lots and lots of different tests, always to be told the same thing: there's nothing wrong with you. Went to a urologist about the bladder issues and things, because I started to get very, very sensitive to all sorts of things, like alcohol. I would be able to feel it in my bladder. I used to describe it as it would make my bladder itch. Because I'd had a drink and I knew it was going to go wrong, so I'd then have to drink loads of water, which obviously kills a night out. So I wasn't really enjoying myself much. Had to worry about what I was wearing all the time as well, like if I had my trousers were too tight, or if I was wearing tights, or all that kind of thing. But urologist didn't come up with anything. Eventually was linking things to my cycle. I started going, okay, maybe I need to see a hormone specialist. So I went to see an endocrinologist. They took bloods, did all that kind of thing. Lo and behold, there's nothing wrong with you. And it just kept on going and going. And I just was getting more and more upset. I had a situation sort of in the middle of those 12 years where my grandmother passed away, and then my other grandparents became very unwell with Alzheimer's, and I was very involved in helping to look after them. A very high stress time of life. And I just couldn't handle it. I fell to pieces. I mean, I did as much as I could over a year or so, but then just fell apart, lost my job, it was just awful, really, really bad time. And when you look at all of these stories that we now see all over the paper, or thank goodness for Davina's programs and things, these are all big, major symptoms, things that I could track back to it being because of perimenopause. But every time I saw a doctor, they would, of course, say, how are your periods? And I say, oh, they're okay, thanks. Because that was it. Every month, no problems, 28 days on the mark. I'd have a very light period. I was quite lucky in that sense. So I didn't have anything to report there. And anything that I did see in my own research, being that self-professed geek, I was constantly
looking for answers. Right.
UTI. Why do I keep getting recurrent UTIs? What is it all about? Anything that said the word menopause, in my mind, oh, that's just to do with the periods, isn't it? So of course, as me and the doctors were all on the same page, I didn't have any knowledge, and those doctors had no reason to look any further than how are your periods.
Because you were so much younger, they just didn't even consider it as an option.
No, exactly. So just went on and on, and as I say, my mental health suffered as a result. I especially would get incredibly low anytime I got something, whether it was thrush or UTI. I would be really beating myself up, because it started to become, I had a terrible relationship with my own body. I think, what's wrong with you? I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that, and every time I try and do something to better myself, this comes along and messes it up. And I really lost faith in my own body.
It must be incredibly difficult when you're repeatedly told there's nothing wrong with you, but that this can't be right.
Absolutely. And I mean, even now, when I look back, there was such funny telltales. I just done a post recently on the page regarding breast changes. And as I was looking at them, I sort of realised that I had this too, in 2018, I had breast implants. I had an enlargement because I'd really lost faith in my body, as I say, not just in how it was behaving, but in how it was looking as well. I've always had a small chest and everything, but I really noticed that after I went on to have another baby in amongst all of that. After the 3 children, my body had changed again, but my breasts had really changed and they just looked awful. And I can remember seeing them and thinking, oh God, they've lost all sorts of content, they just were like empty, and like it was really, really getting to me. And now when I was doing the research for that post, I was like, oh my gosh, there we go. That was another symptom, the loss of elasticity, the loss of like, any kind of tissue around that area was all changed. Yeah. So I then ended up having breast implants. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love them, but maybe I wouldn't have needed them if I hadn't gone into early perimenopause. Who knows? But it's just interesting when you look back that there were all of these telltale signs. And I think that's why I got so frustrated, and why I am still so frustrated that, why didn't I know this? I am somebody that goes looking for answers. I am, I'm hungry for information, but I just couldn't find it. And it could have sold me a lot of years of suffering and struggling physically and mentally if I had, found the page that I'm hoping I'm offering to people now, just lots of information, but in a digestible way. Because I figured it out thanks to Davina.
Yeah. So what was your light bulb moment? Was a post from Davina McCall?
Yeah, well, not necessarily a post. It was, I'm mad on skincare. Absolutely love anything to do with skincare. So I'm a big fan of Caroline Hirons.
Oh, yeah.
So I was watching her. So I wasn't even looking for anything to do with menopause. I was looking at skincare because it's just a guilty pleasure. So she said, oh, I'm going to have this chat with her. We're going to talk about menopausal skin. I think I hadn't not a lot to do that day. I probably did have loads to do, but I was procrastinating. So I thought, yeah, I thought, oh, this isn't relevant to me, but I'll sit and watch it anyway, whatever. And as they started talking, I just went, oh my gosh, and they kept on saying these things about it's not just to do with periods, and it's not just to do with hot flushes, because I've never had a hot flush. Still to this day, I haven't had a hot flush. It can be this and it can be that. And the moment she said UTIs, that was it. I was just like, oh my God, this is what's wrong with me. I've found it. And it actually makes me a bit emotional.
I can see, yeah, like you're kind of reliving that moment of 12 years of, like you say, going through it being all consuming and taking over your life and totally changing your relationship with your body.
Yeah, absolutely. And I came off of that, watching that, and I said to my husband, this is what it is. I said, and we're going to have to go. I'm not talking to doctors anymore. Don't get me wrong. I respect doctors very much. But after so many years of getting the same response over and over and over again, I've lost trust in them as well. I did lose trust in them or their knowledge. And actually, I think I've come to the point now where I go, do you know what? They're just other humans. They're other human beings. They're not godly. They don't know everything. They're just learning the way that we're all learning. So, no one's to blame. But I needed to go and see someone who had a specialism in this. So I made an appointment privately.
Yeah.
Had to wait for about 2.5 months, I think the wait was, even privately. And in that time, kept a diary of all my symptoms and started to really put, the pieces of the puzzle together. To the point where I was so excited, I couldn't wait to have my appointment. Which is crazy. Finally. Yeah. So then I had a wonderful, wonderful doctor. And she just straight away just said, Gemma, you're the perfect patient. She said, you've done all your homework, you've done all your research, you've put your diary together. She said, I don't need to know anymore. You need HRT. And I'd know this from what I've been reading, and I was counting on it making all the difference. So once I started, I mean, I'm very, very sensitive physically to anything. I'm allergic to a fair lot of medication, that kind of stuff. My body is just very aware when you do something different to it. So the minute I started taking that HRT, within days, I felt like a different person.
Really?
Absolute different person. So I'd read, it can take months for it to feel different. Give it time, you'll have problems. But I just felt different within days.
What were the first things that you noticed?
Energy, about my energy, and the brain fog. Because I haven't even spoken about that. See, I think that is still lingering a little bit. But yeah, that was a huge problem. Towards the end of that journey, the brain fog was just too much. I just couldn't get my words out, and I'm a talkative person. And so, I've got a lot to say usually. And I felt like I was in my head, but I was behind a sheet of glass, like this version of me could not get through for love nor money. It was awful. So that really improved quite quickly. And the energy, just this energy from nowhere, I just couldn't believe it. I thought, wow, this is what I was supposed to feel like. It was just wonderful.
All this time.
Yeah.
And did it impact also on your kind of recurrent UTIs, did you go
I
through?
haven't had, touch wood, a UTI since I started.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it's just incredible. For those people that, you know, don't necessarily understand why or how that happens, the reduction in estrogen in the body, every single cell, as I'm sure we're all aware, is influenced by estrogen, but especially with regards to hydration of those cells, and especially around the sex organs. So anywhere in the vagina, the vulva, and also in the urethra can become thin, very, very thin, as a result of not being hydrated properly. That meant that there were microscopic tears all through my urethra as a result of dryness and inflexibility. And bacteria just had a party. They just lived in there constantly. So it would just take like an overgrowth of one part of bacteria that was teeny tiny, and then I'd have another one.
Just
So
fighting a losing battle.
yeah,
There was no way you could win.
constant. Yeah. So then once the estrogen started to replenish, and, you know, started to get all those tissues a bit more healthy and a bit more hydrated, I literally haven't had one since. So yeah, it's completely life changing. I don't worry about, I mean, I'm a yoga teacher. I'm constantly in yoga leggings. I used to worry about that. I used to be more of a harem pants kind of teacher. But now I'm all over my leggings. Don't worry about it. You know, I don't have any concerns at all. I can drink alcohol, not that I drink a lot of it, but, you know, I can without being worried about it. Yeah, and just I really trust in my body again, and I feel like I've had to re-establish that kind of connection where I've, you know, I feel my body going, oh, thank you, thank you, you've figured it out, and like, I'm just really, really happy with that now. So yeah, it's
And you've
amazing.
poured some of that energy into creating Amy, the Ageless
Yeah,
Menopause Info,
yeah.
for other people like you who hopefully, as a result, won't have to spend 12 years battling with this situation that you've been through.
Yeah, absolutely. It's relatable, hopefully. It's, you know, bite-sized chunks of information that may or may not apply to you, but and always kind of trying to keep it very general. I mean, I found when I was looking for information that it was always quite focused on a certain type of woman or a certain thing that had happened to her. And especially as Davina's shows came out around about the time that I was figuring it all out, there was a lot of anger around the sort of consciousness of these women that were sort of saying we've been missed, or, you know, we're losing our jobs, or we need HRT for free, we know, you know, and that's great, and I completely understand it. But as a newcomer coming in and going, what on earth are they talking about, you know, like, what, you know, I don't get it. So I just needed the basics, and I needed them to come from someone maybe who looked a bit like me, I don't know, or maybe not someone who looked so much older, because I just wasn't relating. I was thinking, oh, but that can't be me, because look, she's much older than me, or, you know. But hopefully it is creating that. I've had some lovely messages from people. If anything, it's been a lovely thing for me to connect with so many people and chit chat and going into messages. And I'm happy to talk to anyone about it. You know, I'm not a coach, or it's not a money making thing for me. I respect anyone who does have a business in that way, but for me, it is just about providing and sharing that information. I don't tend to say anything is my word. I tend to sort of say, here's some information and this is where I got it from. So I'll put a post, and then in the stories I do lots of links to other places that are, you know, have got that expertise. So I'm just signposting. I'm just a giant signpost.
But as you say, you maybe wouldn't have been looking in the places where that information might have been available to you because of the kind of the age group, the demographic that you were sitting in at that time. So yeah, the more diversity of voices that we have talking about this, the more likely it is that that messaging is going to get to the right person at the right time.
Yeah, and I think it encourages. I mean, anything that encourages that conversation is great, because I know when I put a post up before I started Amy, I put a post on my personal Instagram about World Menopause Awareness Day, and I said, you know what, it's time. I've got to tell you, I'm amazed at this. You know, it's just to all my friends and family, people that I knew, that I've found what has been going on with me, whether they knew about it or not. You know, and I'm proud to say that I've got my patches on and I'm doing amazing. The amount of people who messaged me and went, oh my gosh, Jen, me too. And I thought, oh, and I would never have known the same way they would never have known. And we're all kind of around about the same age, like people I've seen in the school playground, or friends of friends or whatever, and you go, oh my goodness, why are we not talking about this? So that was really good as well, to be able to share that information and then find people who are reflecting it back at me as well. So it's good for me, and hopefully it's good for other people.
Through the last couple of years, you also decided to train as a menopause yoga instructor. Have you found that has also helped you in addition to the HRT?
Yoga in general, absolutely, 1,000,000%. I mean, it's always helped to try to keep me grounded, to keep me calm. As I said earlier, with regards to that sort of middle part of my journey where I lost myself somewhat there with a lot of stress, and ended up on antidepressants and all that kind of stuff. I'm not on all that anymore, but I do put that down to my practice in yoga. I find that it helped, as I say, to keep me grounded, to keep me calm, and to help me listen to that internal voice a little bit more. So although I was losing faith in my body, I needed to stay present and current in my mind, and I needed to be aware that there's that negative voice isn't me. So I will quite often be heard talking to myself, going, "Oh, just shut up, just shush. You don't know what you're talking about." But actually, I was just talking to that negative voice in my mind, and I had to learn to really separate myself from that voice so that I could navigate the journey. And for me, yoga does that. It's the quietening down of the world so that you can hear what's happening internally. That introception is the most important part of practice for me.
That's interesting, because we talk a lot about the importance of exercise and strength training for our sort of joint, for our bones and muscles, and sort of yoga for flexibility, but we don't perhaps talk so much about the sort of the non-physical element of especially yoga. But you found that was quite powerful side of
Yeah, I
it for you.
mean, I can lose myself in a flow. Don't get me wrong, of course it is. It can be physically challenging. It depends. It's your choice. And I think that's what people get mixed up with yoga, is they think, if I'm going to do it, I have to look like that woman on Instagram doing it, or that person on the telly, or that woman on YouTube. But it doesn't have to be that way. And if you're going to do it for a specific thing, for example, if you've got some back pain or something, and of course, go and follow onto someone. But for me, the best kind of yoga is the kind that I listen to my body and move how it asks me to. So pandiculation, for example, is what is a kind of stretch they call when you see animals who have been asleep and then they get up
The
and they
cat
stretch. Yeah, so they curl around, or they stretch their legs, or they in downward facing dog. My dogs are doing it all the time. But they're not working to a set kind of routine or anything. No one's taught them how to do that. They're basically listening to their body,
just
and they're
feels good.
stretching. Yeah, they're just stretching the bit that wants to be stretched and how it feels. So I tend to work around that when I'm working for myself. Obviously, I teach other people in flows and sessions and things, and it's different. But for my own journey, it has been about moving and listening, and creating that quiet and that space, and listening to what not just your body needs, but what your mind needs as well. So that always was a great point of interest for me when I was learning to become a teacher, was how different areas of the body can relate to different emotion, can relate to different things that are going on in the mind, and how it can show up in the body. I'm a great believer in that as well. So yeah, it is a different way of looking at it. I just would love for more people to understand that yoga is, you can sit still and breathe and it's yoga. Do you know what I mean? It's just, as long as you're being conscious, and that you're purposefully sitting and breathing, you're doing it. And I think a lot of people are scared off when they see handstands and back bends and all that kind of thing. I don't do any of that sort of stuff. I don't believe in it.
I'm pretty sure that damage would be done if I tried to do a handstand.
Oh goodness, I've definitely hurt myself trying. And in the early days, don't get me wrong, I was doing the same thing. I was trying to behave in the way that these people were around me, until I found what I was doing it for. So I think there's a lot of advice out there. Go and exercise, go and do this, go and do that. But I always say to people, what are you here for? What do you want to be doing it for? So in my classes, for example, when I teach regularly at a local gym to us, people who come to my classes know that we won't be doing handstands and back bends and all this kind of stuff, although it's amazing and I respect people who can do that with their bodies. I always say to people, I'm here for longevity. I'm here so that when you're 80 odd, you can bend over and put your shoes on. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of idea. Yeah, exactly. So as long as you're building a certain amount of strength in the body, and we're kind of working towards old age, and of course that does work with coming into menopause as well, and understanding different parts of your body that are going to be reacting and responding in certain ways. You're still practicing yoga. The menopause side for me, I think, again, is mostly mental. I really love the idea of giving space to women who want to just listen to themselves and not have to care and worry about everybody else for a minute. So that time on your mat, I will always say, is precious. That's you time, and you should honor yourself for dedicating that time and space to yourself, even if you do just lay there and breathe, because it's just as important as if you did like 10 sun salutations. It's more important as far as I'm concerned.
Are there other things that you feel you've been able to do in this last year to kind of come back to your body, to reclaim that relationship?
With regards to the yoga, do you mean?
Or just sort of generally, I kind of think, 12 years is such an incredibly long time to be in that difficult space where you're sort of, you're gaslit, you're anxious, as you said, you can't trust your body any longer, and you're sort of constantly almost fearful of what it's going to serve up to you next.
I probably found a sense of, I don't know how to describe it really, just a sense of knowing in myself again and understanding my body as I've learned all of these new things. And as I say, I'm still learning them. When I looked back at the whole breast changes thing the other day and was like, oh, that's why I had implants, that kind of thing, and sort of finding out and forgiving the past a little bit. I know it sounds a little bit, hippie or whatever, but
no.
It's just that idea of how much I'd put myself through mentally. What's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? My God, what's wrong with my body? Why can't you just be like everybody else? Or why are you so tired all the time? And that kind of just, letting myself off for that now and going, okay, it was okay. Don't worry. We didn't mean it. It's a really strange sense that, it's just a knowing now that I wasn't going mad.
Being able to be kinder to yourself.
Yeah, much, much kinder to myself. Yeah, that's definitely it. I mean, and we hear so many people throwing around the terms of self-love and all that kind of thing, to the point where it's become so cliche, but it is so incredibly important to be able to look at yourself and think, there we go, well done, we're doing it. We're looking after ourselves. And I think it has probably made me a bit bolder, a bit sort of stronger, especially when it comes to standing up and saying what you don't want to do, because I think I've read this a lot about people saying that the menopausal years are the times when you sort of don't care anymore. You just go, no, this is it, I'm done.
Priorities.
So, and I think family will definitely testify to that with me just going, no, not doing it. So I think I have found that, because like you say, for 12 years of being constantly, what is this all about? I felt like I was just dragging myself around from place to place. Whereas now I feel like I'll go with purpose.
You've got your wholehearted yes rather than a half-hearted.
And a wholehearted no as well. I must admit. I've just found that place where I can speak from now, because I feel whole again. Like I've got mind in place, body in place. We're all working as one under this happy yoga umbrella, and I'm good.
That's a fantastic place to finish. Well, I'm so happy that you're using some of that newfound energy to put into Amy Ageist Menopause info on Instagram. We'll pop a link into the show notes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I think you've got a really lovely kind of style with the sort of the conversational way that you share stuff on there. So yeah, all success to you.
And to you too.
You've been listening to the Middling Along podcast. Do remember to subscribe to be notified when our next episode is live. And why not visit the blog at www.middlingalong.com to sign up to my newsletter as well. I do hope you enjoyed listening today. If you did, I'd be really grateful if you would consider leaving a short review, as that helps people find the podcast and helps get it noticed. Hope you can join us next time. Goodbye for now.